They sold her because she couldn't bear a child. But fate had other plans. The man she was given to wasn't just a king, he was a beast cursed by the gods. And when he chose her, the kingdom trembled. This isn't a story about beauty saving the beast. It's about the beast saving her. Leora had always believed that the moon listened. When she was a child, she used to sneak out after sunset and kneel barefoot in the frostbitten fields, whispering her wishes into the wind. Her mother said the moon goddess favored girls who spoke softly, girls who waited. So Leora waited, for her shifting to come, for the pain in her belly to mean life instead of loss, for a miracle that never arrived. Her father used to tell her she was touched by stars. He said it when she fetched water or mended his torn shirts, when her mother's eyes softened despite exhaustion. But words can rot, and over time, even gentle lies turn sour. By her 20th year, no one spoke of stars anymore, only of debts. Their cottage sat on the edge of the village, far enough from the pack's main hall to be forgotten, close enough to be taxed. The walls sagged, the thatch leaked, and hunger was as constant as breath. But on that morning, it wasn't hunger that burned through the air, it was dread. The rumble of hooves came first. Then the smell, smoke, steel, and wolf musk. Every villager froze where they stood. The royal riders had come. And when the banner appeared, black fabric bearing the silver fong of the king, Leora's heart dropped into her stomach. The door burst open before her father could rise. The beta stepped inside, tall as the doorway itself, his golden eyes slicing through the gloom like a blade. Behind him, 2 lesser guards waited, their armor glinting in the firelight. Bram of Holofen, the beta rumbled. The season's tax is due. Her father tried to stand tall, but his hands shook. My lord, we've paid what we could. The crops failed this winter. Please grant us time. Time? The beta's lip curled. You think the Alpha King grants mercy? Taxes have doubled this season, by His Majesty's decree. Her father's face went pale. Double? But we have nothing left. The beta's gaze drifted lazily over the room. The broken table, the patched blankets, the 2 frightened daughters huddled near the hearth. His eyes lingered on Mara, the younger one, bright-eyed and trembling. Perhaps, he said slowly, you have something of greater value. Mara whimpered and pressed closer to their mother. Leora's pulse thundered. She knew that tone. Every woman in Holofen did. The king's castle was said to be filled with girls taken as tribute, the beautiful, the strong, the unlucky. Her father's voice wavered. She's promised to be mated next spring. She'll bear fine cubs for the pack. The beta's gaze sharpened. And the other one? Leora froze as his eyes locked on her. Her father hesitated, just for a moment, and in that hesitation, Leora's fate was sealed. She saw the war behind his eyes. Love against desperation. And then love lost. She is barren. Bram said at last, the words scraping out of him like splinters. Useless for the pack, but strong enough to work. Take her, my lord. Spare the younger. Leora's mother gasped, Bram, but her protest died as the beta's shadow fell across the room. Barren, he repeated with cruel amusement. A defective half-breed, then. The king will be intrigued. Leora's throat burned, but she forced herself to lift her chin. If she cried now, she would give them the satisfaction of thinking her weak. If His Majesty needs another servant, she said quietly, then I'll go. Her mother began to sob. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. Even the fire seemed to shrink back into the hearth. The beta smiled.
Good.
I despise dragging them screaming. He tossed a small pouch of silver onto the table, the price of a human life, though not even enough to buy a good horse, and motioned for his guards. Bind her hands. Mara lunged forward.
No.
Take me instead. Leora turned sharply. Quiet, Mara. Her voice was calm, too calm. Be good for mother. Don't waste your tears on someone already sold. The beta's laughter followed her out the door. As the riders led her away, the morning frost bit at her bare feet. Leora didn't look back. The world behind her had already turned to ash. The world ahead, the king's world, gleamed in the distance like a blade dipped in moonlight. She used to believe stories were lanterns in the dark. But now she understood they were traps. Lies wrapped in hope, bait for the foolish. And she had been the most foolish of all. That was the day hope died. And the day her real story began. The journey to the Silverfang capital lasted 3 days and 3 sleepless nights. Each mile stretched longer than the last. The guards didn't speak to her, except for gruff commands. Keep up. Don't look at us. The beta rode ahead, silent as stone. Every so often, Leora caught the flash of his golden eyes watching her from beneath his hood, and she wondered if he was imagining what kind of price her body might fetch in the king's hall. The landscape changed as they neared the capital. The endless gray forest thinned into icy plains, and on the horizon rose a sight so majestic it almost stole her breath: the king's fortress. It was carved into the side of a mountain, its towers of pale marble gleaming beneath a wan moon. To the villagers, the castle was a holy place. To Leora, it looked like a tomb wearing a crown. At the gates, a dozen armored wolves shifted to human form. Their silver insignias caught the torchlight, sharp fangs over a crescent moon. They bowed to the beta, barely glancing at Leora, though she felt their curiosity like claws against her skin. The gates yawned open with a sound like 1,000 chains dragged across stone. The smell hit her first: iron, musk, and the faint, sweet rot of old blood. They didn't take her through the grand entrance where nobles and petitioners came. Instead, she was led through a narrow passage carved into the mountain's base, where the air grew damp and cold. They descended spiral staircases lit by weak torches, passing cells where pale faces stared out through rusted bars. Human slaves, most of them. A few shifters who'd lost favor. All silent. All broken. The beta stopped before a heavy iron door and gestured toward a gray-haired woman waiting beside it. This one's for the king's lower staff. You know what to do, Marwyn. The woman's eyes were sharp as glass. Another tribute, then? He's been busy this season. She's a barren half-breed. Might amuse him, the beta replied, already turning away. Marwyn's lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. Oh, I'm sure she will. When the beta left, the door slammed shut behind him. The clang echoed through Leora's chest. She stood motionless until Marwyn's voice cut through the stillness. Strip. Leora blinked. What? You heard me. Marwyn's tone carried the bored cruelty of someone long accustomed to obedience. You came from the mud. You'll not bring it into the king's halls. Off with it. When Leora didn't move quickly enough, 2 servant girls seized her arms and ripped the coarse village dress from her back. She stood naked beneath the torchlight, goose flesh rising across her skin as buckets of icy water poured over her. The servants scrubbed until her skin burned. She's not even marked, one of them whispered. No mate bond, no wolf scent. Pathetic, said the other. Marwyn's eyes flicked over Leora's trembling body. The king won't like that, she murmured, almost to herself. He despises weakness. They threw her a rough linen shift and a pair of 2 large sandals. Then, without explanation, she was marched through a series of tunnels until the air changed, drier, warmer, scented faintly with myrrh and smoke. Finally, they stopped in a small stone antechamber with a single gilded mirror and a table of untouched food. Marwyn handed her a cloth to dry her hair. You'll be presented to the king tomorrow. Leora's fingers stilled. Presented? The woman's grin was slow and serpentine. Every season, His Majesty takes a handful of tributes from the villages. Some become servants. Others become playthings. A few disappear altogether. What you become depends entirely on how well you please him. Leora's stomach twisted. I am no one's plaything. Marwyn chuckled softly. That's what they all say. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. A word of advice, little barren one, keep your head down and your mouth shut. The walls here remember screams better than names. The door shut, and Leora was alone.
She didn't eat.
She didn't sleep. She sat beneath the cold light filtering through the iron bars above and listened to the castle breathe, distant footsteps, the hiss of closing doors, the faint howl of wolves somewhere far below. When dawn finally touched the edge of her cell, she whispered to the moon as she once had in her childhood.
Please.
If you ever listen to me, don't let me be forgotten here. No answer came. Only silence. The next morning arrived cloaked in mist, and the air tasted like cold iron. Leora hadn't slept, but exhaustion had numbed her fear into something sharp and functional. When Marwyn entered again, flanked by 2 guards, Leora was already standing. Her shift clung damply to her skin, her hair braided loosely as she'd seen noble women wear it in the market square years ago. Good, Marwyn said, though her tone made it sound like an insult. At least you have the sense to look presentable. The guards didn't bother to shackle her wrists this time, but one gripped her elbow hard enough to bruise as they led her through winding hallways. They passed servants scrubbing marble floors that gleamed like frozen water, courtiers in velvet whispering behind jeweled masks, and guards whose eyes slid over her with mild disdain. No one spoke to her directly. She was invisible already. When they reached a vast set of golden doors, Marwyn stopped. Do not speak unless addressed. Do not raise your eyes until told to. If you do, I'll personally see to it that your tongue feeds the dogs. The doors opened with a deep groan. The throne room was vast, a cathedral of light and silence. Banners of silver and black hung from vaulted ceilings, embroidered with the crescent fong of the royal crest. The air shimmered faintly with magic, that peculiar hum that set her half-shifter blood buzzing beneath her skin. And at the end of the hall, seated upon a throne carved of obsidian and bone, was the Alpha King. Leora's first impression was that he didn't seem entirely real. His presence distorted the room, bending the air around him. His skin was pale as frost, his hair, black as crow feathers, fell in loose waves around his shoulders. Power clung to him like a storm refusing to die. She bowed low, keeping her eyes on the floor. Your Majesty, Marwyn's voice rang out, brittle and shrill. The tributes from the outer provinces are assembled. Let them come forward, the king said. His voice wasn't what she expected. It was low, deep enough to make the marble beneath her knees hum. One by one, the girls were presented, 6 of them, each trembling, each beautiful in a way that looked curated for display. When Leora's turn came, she stepped forward, her heartbeat loud enough to drown her own thoughts. This one, Marwyn said with faint contempt, is from Holofen. She's a half-breed, unshifted, barren. The silence that followed was unbearable. Leora could feel his gaze resting on her like fire. Barren, the king repeated softly, as if tasting the word. And yet she stands unbroken before me. Leora kept her head bowed, but her throat tightened. Something in his tone wasn't mockery. It was curiosity. He rose from the throne. The room seemed to breathe with him. When he spoke again, it wasn't to Marwyn or the guards, it was to her. What is your name? She hesitated. Leora, your Majesty. And tell me, Leora of Holofen, he said, moving closer until she could sense the shadow of his form over her. What do you fear most? The other girls had given meek, desperate answers: punishment, hunger, death. But Leora's mind flashed to her father's downcast eyes, to her mother's silence, to Mara's cry that still echoed in her bones. Being forgotten, she said at last, her voice steady. The king paused. The entire room seemed to still. Then, to her shock, he laughed, quietly, almost bitterly. A truthful answer. How rare. Marwyn shifted uneasily. Your Majesty, she. Enough, the king said, his tone slicing the air like a blade. Leave us. Marwyn froze. But
now.
The guards obeyed instantly. Within moments, the hall was empty except for the king and the girl who dared to speak. Look at me, he commanded. Her body moved before her mind could protest. And when her eyes met his, something inside her chest cracked open. His gaze was not simply powerful, it was ancient, full of stormlight and sorrow. And for the briefest instant, she thought she saw recognition flicker there, as though he'd been waiting for her all along. You are not like the others, he murmured, stepping closer. You carry no scent of fear, though you have every reason to reek of it. Tell me, Leora, do you know what happens to those the moon denies? She swallowed hard. They're forgotten by the pack. Cast out. His mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Then perhaps you and I are not so different. She didn't understand what he meant. Not yet, but his words struck deep. Marwyn will find you quarters, he said at last, his voice softer now. Not among the servants. You'll stay in the East Wing, in the library hall. You will answer only to me. Leora blinked. Your Majesty? His gaze held hers, sharp enough to cut. You said you fear being forgotten. Then I will remember you. Before she could speak, he turned away. Go, he said, almost as if dismissing his own thoughts. I will summon you when I wish. 2 guards re-entered and guided her from the room, though their expressions had changed. No one, it seemed, had expected the king to choose her. As the great doors closed behind her, Leora's mind swirled. The king's words, his tone, the strange flicker in his eyes. None of it made sense. But one thing was certain. She had just stepped into the jaws of something far larger, darker, and more dangerous than she could comprehend. And deep down, for the first time since leaving home, a spark of curiosity dared to stir. The east wing of the Silver Fawn Castle was nothing like the rest of the fortress. Where the grand halls glittered with chandeliers and polished marble, this part felt half forgotten, its corridors cloaked in shadow, the air damp with the scent of dust and disuse. The guards escorted Leora to her quarters without a word, their boots echoing off stone like drumbeats of finality. When the door closed behind her, the silence was absolute. The room was far grander than she expected, a bed draped in velvet, tall windows shrouded with heavy curtains, and an ornate fireplace that burned low with silver-blue flames. On the far wall hung a mirror taller than a man, its surface rippling faintly as if reflecting a world not quite her own. For a long while, Leora simply stood there. Every nerve screamed that this was wrong. She was a peasant girl, a castaway, not someone meant for silken sheets and golden candlelight. She touched the edge of the bed just to be sure it was real. Then she saw it, a tray left on the table, holding food still steaming, and a folded letter sealed with the royal crest. Her pulse quickened. Carefully, she broke the wax. You will remain here until summoned. The East Wing is forbidden to all but me. Do not wander past the library doors. The castle does not take kindly to curiosity.
K.
Just the initial, like a warning whispered through paper. She ate little, though the food was finer than anything she'd tasted before, her stomach too tight with nerves to hold it. Afterward, she paced, tracing her fingers along the spines of the books lining the wall. They were old, their titles written in languages she couldn't read. But one, bound in blue leather, seemed newly placed. When she opened it, a single sheet slipped out and fluttered to the floor. A sketch. Her breath caught. It was a woman, tall, cloaked in moonlight, her eyes luminous and kind. Beneath the drawing, in the same elegant hand as the letter, were words that made Leora's blood run cold. The goddess abandons no one. She merely waits to be remembered. Leora stared at the page until her eyes blurred. The same goddess she'd prayed to as a child, the same one who had given her nothing. What game are you playing, Your Majesty? She didn't have long to wonder. As dusk fell, a knock sounded at her door, soft, deliberate. Before she could answer, a servant entered, bowing low. His Majesty summons you to the East Library. Leora's hands trembled slightly as she followed the servant down the winding corridor. The air grew colder the farther they went, torches flickering weakly against the encroaching dark. At the end stood a massive door of carved oak, engraved with wolves beneath a crescent moon. The servant opened it, bowed again, and retreated without a word. The library was breathtaking. Shelves soared to the ceiling, crammed with scrolls and tomes that gleamed like treasure. Candles floated in midair, casting pools of golden light. But what drew her attention wasn't the books, it was the sound. A low growl, deep and ragged, rolled through the room. Your Majesty, she whispered. Silence. Then movement, swift, heavy, deliberate. From between two towering shelves, a figure emerged. He was not as she'd seen him before. The king's regal attire was gone, replaced by loose black garments that hung from his frame. But it wasn't his clothes that stole her breath, it was his face. No, not his face. Not exactly. The faint sheen of moonlight revealed the truth. His eyes gleamed brighter than gold now, feral, inhuman, and across his skin, faint markings glowed like embers beneath flesh. His hands were larger, his fingers ending in curved claws that shimmered silver at the tips. He looked like something half-born of nightmare and divinity. Leora froze, torn between terror and awe. The king, Kale, watched her with an unreadable expression. "You didn't scream," he said finally, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. "You look," she struggled for the right word, "different." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. That's a generous way to put it. She took a hesitant step forward. "Is this your true form?" His gaze sharpened. "True?"
No.
"Merely what the curse allows." "Curse." Kale turned away, pacing toward the tall windows where the moon's light filtered through. "You've heard stories, I'm sure. The beast of Silverfong. The cruel king who punishes his subjects with blood and flame. But what they never tell is that the beast and the king are one and the same." He turned back to her. "Every sunset, the curse takes hold. Until dawn, I wear the skin. It is my punishment for what I once was." Leora's heart thudded. "And what were you?" His eyes burned, twin suns in shadow. A man who believed power could protect him from the gods. For a long, trembling moment, neither spoke. Then he said softly, "Do you fear me now?" Leora swallowed hard, meeting his gaze despite every instinct to look away. "Yes," she admitted, "but I fear what's behind your eyes more than what I see in front of me." That startled him. "Behind my eyes?" "The loneliness," she said. "It's the same as mine." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was heavy with something else, something neither of them had the courage to name. Finally, Kale nodded once. "You'll come here each night," he said. "Read to me."
"Speak to me."
"Perhaps it will make the hours less unbearable." She bowed slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." As she turned to leave, his voice followed her. "Leora," he said. She looked back. "There are many locked doors in this wing. Do not open them." Her pulse skipped. "Why?" "Because," he said, his eyes gleaming faintly in the dim light, "some things were never meant to be unchained." Leora didn't sleep that night. Even when she returned to her chamber, her mind replayed every word, every flicker of moonlight that had turned the king's face from man to myth. A curse. That was the word he'd used. And though her body trembled with exhaustion, her heart beat with something dangerously close to curiosity. When dawn finally came, she pulled open the curtains. The world outside the window glowed pale gold, the mountains wrapped in mist. And then movement in the courtyard below. The king himself, now human again, stood beside his generals. No trace of the monstrous form from the night before remained. He was composed, regal, the picture of control. The sunlight glinted off his silver crown, as if mocking the secret she alone now shared. By noon, the summons came again. This time, the guards brought her not to the library, but to a private chamber adjoining it, a study, lined with ancient tomes and maps inked with constellations. Kale stood by the fire, his back to her, his posture rigid. When she entered, he spoke without turning. "You didn't run." "Was I supposed to?" His head tilted slightly. "Most do." She moved closer, her bare feet silent on the rug. "If you wanted me dead, I imagine it would have happened already." That made him turn. The faintest smile ghosted across his lips. "You're braver than I thought. Or stupider." He laughed then, a quiet, startled sound that made something inside her chest loosen. "Perhaps both," he said.
"Seat."
A chair awaited her near the hearth. The flames burned with a strange blue hue, casting the room in ghostly light. Kale poured 2 cups of dark liquid from a silver carafe and handed one to her. "Wolf's tea," he explained. "It will steady your nerves." She accepted it, though her fingers brushed his in the exchange, and the contact sent an electric pulse up her arm. She wondered if he felt it too, but his expression gave nothing away. For a while, neither spoke. The fire cracked softly. Then Leora said, "You said last night that the curse is a punishment." "For what?" Kale's eyes darkened. "For pride. For thinking I could command the divine." She waited. He studied her face, as if measuring how much of the truth she could bear. Finally, he began. "When I was a young prince, the kingdom was dying.
Famine, Rebellion, endless war.
I sought the aid of the moon priestess, one of the last of the goddesses chosen. She offered a pact, peace, in exchange for humility. But I was too arrogant to understand her meaning. I demanded power instead. Power to crush my enemies, to end the famine, to make my name eternal." He set his cup down with care. "She granted my wish with a curse. By day, I would wear the face of a king loved and feared. By night, I would become what I truly was inside, a beast shaped by hunger and rage. I killed her before she could remove it." Leora's stomach twisted. "You killed the priestess?" His gaze dropped to the fire. In a moment of madness, her blood sealed the curse. For a moment, all Leora could hear was the crackle of the flames. "And there's no way to break it?" "There is always a way," he said softly, "but it demands something the cursed rarely possess, pure love, untainted by power or fear. Love for the beast, not the king." He gave a mirthless smile. "I stopped believing such a thing existed long ago." She stared at him, torn between pity and disbelief. "You think no one could ever love you as you are?" "I think no one should," he said simply. "You've seen what I become. You should hate me." "But I don't," she said before she could stop herself. He looked up sharply. "Then you are a fool." "Maybe," she said, meeting his gaze, "but a fool who believes even monsters can be lonely." His jaw tightened. "Loneliness is the least of my punishments." They lapsed into silence again, but the tension that filled the room had shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something fragile, fragile enough to shatter if either of them breathed too loudly. Finally, Kale said, "You read yes? You told Marwyn you were educated." "I learned letters from a healer once," she said. "I used to read stories to my sister." "Then you'll do the same for me." He gestured to the shelves. "Choose one." Leora rose and traced her fingers along the books until she found a weathered tome, its spine etched with silver script. "The Moon's Covenant," she read aloud. He inclined his head.
Fitting.
She sat again and began to read. Her voice wavered at first, but soon it found rhythm, soft, steady, like water over stones. The tale spoke of gods and mortals, of curses born from pride and love strong enough to undo them. When she finished, Kale's eyes were closed, his expression strangely peaceful. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "Your voice, it makes even pain sound like poetry." Leora's cheeks flushed. "It's only words, Your Majesty." "No," he murmured, opening his eyes to meet hers. "It's more than that. Words are the only magic left that still listens." That night, when she returned to her chamber, she found another note waiting on her table, sealed in black wax. "Tomorrow, come before sunset. There are things the moon must not hear." She traced the signature, just the single K, again. And for the first time since being sold, Leora found herself wondering not how to escape, but what it was she truly wanted to discover about the beast who ruled her world. The following evening, the sky was the color of bruised silk when the guards escorted Leora once more to the East Wing. The castle was quieter than usual. Even the corridors seemed to hold their breath. The scent of burning sage lingered faintly in the air, an ancient practice, she remembered, to ward off dark magic. Kale was waiting in the library again, though the firelight caught him differently this time. He wasn't in his ceremonial robes, but a simple black tunic, his hair unbound, his crown absent. Without the trappings of power, he looked younger, tired, human. "You came," he said, his tone unreadable. "You summoned me." His lips curved faintly. "You're learning." She moved toward him, clutching the worn book she'd brought from her chamber. You said there were things the moon must not hear. What did you mean? Kale hesitated, staring into the fire. When the moon is full, the curse grows restless. The beast listens. It remembers. There are nights when I wake with blood on my hands and cannot recall whose it was. A shiver ran through her. You lose control? He nodded once. Completely. The palace calls them the bleeding moons. During those nights, no one is allowed near this wing. Not even my generals. You will stay in your room until dawn, no matter what you hear. Her voice trembled. What do you mean, no matter what I hear? His eyes flicked toward her, gold glinting in the firelight. Because it will sound like my voice calling for you. Her heart skipped a beat. Would it be? Kale didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and poured them both cups of dark wine from a crystal decanter. Do you know what it's like, he said softly, to hear your own voice beg for mercy and not recognize it as your own? She accepted the cup, her hands brushing his again. I know what it's like to not recognize yourself, she whispered. Every day, I try to remember who I was before the world told me I was broken. His gaze lifted to her face, lingering there for a heartbeat too long. And have you found her? No, she said honestly. But I think I've found someone who sees her, even when I can't. Kale's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. He looked away first. You shouldn't say such things to a cursed man. Maybe I don't see a cursed man, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe I see someone who's been waiting for forgiveness. The silence that followed was a living thing, fragile, trembling, and unbearably intimate. The fire cracked softly between them, the shadows curling like smoke around their words. Read to me, he said at last, his tone rougher than before. She opened her book, though her voice quavered at first. The story she chose was one she'd written herself, back in Holofen. It was about a creature of smoke and shadow, doomed to devour every light it touched until a girl offered him her heart as a lantern. When she finished, Kale was staring at her, not like a king, but like a man who'd been starving and had just remembered what food tasted like. Who wrote that? He asked quietly. I did. He blinked. You. I used to tell stories to my sister, she said, tracing the edge of the page. It was the only way to make her forget how hungry we were. A strange emotion flickered across his features, something raw, almost vulnerable. You create worlds, he murmured. And yet you call yourself barren. Leora froze, the word cutting deep. That's what my father called me. Then your father was a fool. Her throat tightened. You sound certain. I am, he said, his voice low. You give life with your words. You carry the power to change hearts. That is creation, Leora. The sound of her name on his lips made her pulse stutter. Before she could reply, a sharp wind rattled the windows. The candles flickered, their flames bending toward the floor. Kale's eyes snapped to the nearest window. The moon was rising, full and bright, spilling silver light across the floor. Go, he said suddenly. His voice changed, harsher, urgent.
Now.
Leora stood. What's happening? The full moon, it's too soon. His breath came faster, the color draining from his face. Leave this room.
Now.
But she didn't move. His hands braced on the table, fingers clawing into the wood as his body convulsed. Bone cracked, muscle swelled, and the familiar sound, the deep, wrenching growl she'd heard that first night, filled the air. Kale, she cried. Run, he rasped, his voice already warping into something not quite human. She stumbled backward, the book falling from her grasp as the transformation overtook him. His spine arched, his shoulders splitting through fabric, claws carving grooves into the marble. In seconds, the man was gone, and in his place stood the beast. The creature turned toward her, its golden eyes blazing, its breath steaming in the cold. Leora froze, torn between horror and heartbreak. Kale, she whispered. If you can still hear me, fight it. The beast snarled, taking a step forward. But then, something unexpected happened. It stopped. The creature's chest heaved, muscles trembling, claws digging into the floor as if fighting itself. Leora, trembling, reached for the fallen book, the story of the girl and the creature of shadow, and lifted it like a talisman. Her voice shook but didn't break. And when the creature saw the light she offered, she read aloud. It remembered the sound of its own name. The beast froze, its head tilting ever so slightly. Leora's eyes filled with tears. "You're not lost," she whispered. "Not while I remember you." The creature gave a low, guttural sound, half growl, half sigh, and then turned away, retreating into the dark corner of the library. When it finally disappeared into shadow, Leora collapsed to her knees, the sound of her own heartbeat echoing in her skull. Outside, the moon blazed mercilessly, and somewhere deep in the castle, a roar of anguish shook the stone. Morning came like an unwanted visitor, gray, heavy, and silent. The servants found Leora asleep on the floor of the East Library, the open book clutched in her arms. She woke to the sound of hushed voices, and when she tried to rise, pain shot through her legs. The marble was cold beneath her skin, but colder still was the dread that filled her chest when she realized what she'd done. She had disobeyed a direct order from the king. She had stayed. Marwyn was the first to speak. "You survived the full moon." Her tone was flat, but there was a tremor underneath surprise. Maybe even fear. No one survives the full moon in his presence. Leora forced her aching limbs to stand. "He didn't hurt me." "Then the gods must be protecting you," Marwyn muttered. "Or cursing you." The older woman's eyes darted toward the shadows at the edge of the room where scorch marks stained the marble and the scent of singed magic still lingered. She motioned for the guards. "His Majesty forbids anyone from entering this wing until he says otherwise. You'll stay in your chambers until summoned." Leora opened her mouth to protest, but the look Marwyn gave her, one part warning, one part pity, silenced her. When they left her alone, the quiet was unbearable. She gathered the fallen pages, her mind replaying the night before. Cale's voice breaking mid-word, his hands turning to claws, his body convulsing as he fought to remain himself. And the way he had stopped. He'd heard her. Somehow, through the monster, he'd listened. That knowledge should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with dangerous hope. 3 days passed without word. The castle moved like a creature holding its breath. Courtiers whispered that the king had fallen ill. Others swore he'd gone feral and was being restrained in the mountain crypts. Only Marwyn visited Leora's quarters, delivering food and curt warnings. On the 4th night, Leora couldn't stand it any longer. She slipped from her room, barefoot, carrying only a candle and the blue leather book that had first fallen into her lap. The corridors of the East Wing stretched ahead, eerie and endless. Her own footsteps sounded like heartbeats. The great library doors were unguarded. Inside, the air was colder, the fire long dead. But something else waited in the center of the room, a chain. Thick, silver, and etched with runes that glowed faintly blue. The links ran from the base of a marble pillar toward the far corner of the room. Her candlelight flickered across movement. He was there.
Cale.
He sat slumped against the pillar, his head bowed, his wrists bound in the enchanted chains. In the flickering light, his face looked hollowed by exhaustion. He wasn't the beast tonight, but he wasn't entirely human either. His eyes glowed faintly even in shadow. When she gasped, he lifted his head. "You shouldn't be here." She stepped closer. "You're chained." "By my own order," he said, his voice rough. "I hurt no one that way." Leora knelt beside him, the candle trembling in her hand. "You weren't going to hurt me." "You don't know that."
Ido.
Their eyes met, hers trembling, his full of something he could no longer hide. "I heard you," he said softly. "Through the madness. Your voice, it reached me." She swallowed. "Then the beast listens." He gave a bitter smile. "To you, perhaps. To no one else." She hesitated, then reached for the chain. The metal burned cold beneath her fingers. The runes pulsed brighter, reacting to her touch. Cale hissed softly, not from pain, but surprise. "What are you doing?" "I'm tired of watching you fight this alone." He flinched at the word alone. "You don't understand." These chains are forged from moonstone and silver, stronger than any blade. They're what keep the curse contained. Maybe the curse doesn't need chains, she said quietly. Maybe it needs faith. His laugh was low, weary. Faith doesn't change what I am.
It changed what I thought I was, she said.
I thought I was worthless. I thought being barren meant broken. But I was wrong. You showed me that. Cale went still, his breath sharp in the silence. Leora, he said after a moment, her name heavy on his tongue. You can't say things like that.
Why?
Because I might believe you. The words hung between them like fire in the dark. Slowly, she reached for him. Her hand hovered inches from his cheek. Let me help you. He closed his eyes. You already are. Her fingers brushed his skin, warm, real, trembling. The runes along the chain flared suddenly, flooding the room with light. Cale gasped, his body jerking as the silver links cracked one by one, releasing sparks that scattered like fireflies. Leora. She pulled back, blinded by the brilliance, but the light kept growing until it filled every corner of the room. When it finally faded, the chains were gone. Cale stared at his free hands in disbelief. Then his eyes lifted to her. What did you do? She shook her head, stunned. I don't know. He reached for her then, his fingers curling gently around her wrist. Yes, you do, he said, voice unsteady. You believed. For a long heartbeat, they stayed like that, two souls trembling in the aftermath of something neither fully understood. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep in the castle, came the echo of a distant howl. Cale's expression hardened. They'll come for me. Who? My council. They'll think the curse is broken wrong. He rose, pulling her up with him. Whatever happens next, do not leave this wing. Promise me. Leora nodded, though fear prickled beneath her skin. As he turned toward the door, the last remnants of light from the broken chains shimmered faintly on the marble floor, like moonlight caught in tears. For the first time since entering the castle, Leora didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt like a key. The castle trembled with unrest the next morning. Leora could feel it in the air, the tension, the whispers, the heavy clang of armor echoing down the halls. The sky outside was slate gray, storm clouds rolling in over the mountains. The moment she stepped into the corridor, she knew something had changed. Guards stood at every corner, their hands tight on their weapons. When she tried to make her way toward the library, Marwyn appeared out of the shadows like a ghost. Where are you going? The older woman demanded. Her tone wasn't cruel this time, it was sharp, frightened. To see the king, Leora said, chin high. You can't. I must. Marwyn's expression wavered, something close to pity flickering across it. Leora, they know. Her blood ran cold. Who knows? The High Council. They've discovered that the chains were broken. The runes were crafted by the moon priesthood itself. No mortal hand can undo them. Yet they shattered. Leora's pulse quickened. He's free. Isn't that what they wanted? Marwyn's mouth tightened. Freedom isn't what they fear. It's change. The curse kept balance between the beast and the man. Without it, they fear the darkness will consume him entirely. Then they're wrong. Marwyn grasped her arm, her voice low and urgent. You don't understand. They believe you tampered with ancient magic. They think you've bewitched the king. Leora froze. What? They're preparing to accuse you of witchcraft. Her stomach twisted. That's madness. In this castle, Marwyn said grimly, madness is law when the council declares it so. By afternoon, the great hall had become a stage for judgment. Torches burned along the marble walls, and the banners of the royal line hung heavy in the stale air. The council sat upon the dais, 6 men and 1 woman, their robes silver and crimson. In the center stood Cale, no crown, no armor, only the black tunic he'd worn the night before. His expression was thunderclouds. Leora was brought forward, wrists bound by leather cords. The crowd of courtiers whispered viciously. The slave girl, the barren one, the king's whore. She ignored them. Her eyes sought Cale's. He looked at her just once, and in that look she read everything: fear, guilt, and something that twisted her heart: helplessness. The High Chancellor rose. His voice was oily smooth. "Your Majesty, we have reason to believe the shattering of the chains was not an act of divine mercy, but of forbidden sorcery. The girl stands accused of practicing witchcraft and binding her will to yours." Cale's voice was steel. "That is a lie." "Then how do you explain the breaking of the Moonstone runes?" He hesitated. The hall seized the silence like a blade. Leora stepped forward, the cords biting into her wrists. "It wasn't sorcery," she said. "It was faith. He was fighting himself, and I—" "Silence," the Chancellor barked. "You will speak only when permitted." Cale's hand slammed down on the armrest of his throne, the sound echoing like thunder. "You will not silence her in my presence." The hall stilled. Cale rose slowly. Every movement radiated command. "This woman," he said, "has shown me mercy when none of you dared. She has risked her life to save mine. If faith is a crime, then you will chain me beside her." The Chancellor's face went pale. "Your Majesty, you endanger your rule by defending her. Already the people whisper that the curse has tainted your mind." Cale's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Then let them whisper."
Majesty.
Enough. His words were quiet, but the air itself seemed to bend around them. The flames of the torches flared brighter, then dimmed, as though the room itself feared him. And for a heartbeat, just one, Leora saw it. The faint flicker of gold in his eyes. The beast wasn't gone. It was watching. The Chancellor noticed too. "You see," he shouted, pointing. "Even now, the curse twists him. The beast lives within his skin." Cale stiffened, fighting the tremor in his hands. "Leave her out of this." But the council had their momentum now. The girl is the source. Remove her, and the balance may yet be restored. Marwyn stepped from the shadows then, voice trembling but fierce. "You fools. Do you not see what you're doing? He's stable because of her. She's the tether that keeps the beast from consuming him entirely." The hall erupted in chaos. Guards surged forward, grabbing Leora by the arms. Cale's roar shattered the air. "Half human, half beast. Touch her, and I'll tear out your throats." The nearest guards froze, trembling. But others moved in, their courage buoyed by fear and obedience. Leora struggled, shouting, "Cale, don't, please, don't become what they think you are." That single plea stopped him. His body trembled, the golden glow in his eyes dimming as he forced himself to breathe. "Take her to the dungeon," the Chancellor commanded. "At dawn, she will face trial." Cale's voice broke through the tumult, low and cold as winter. "If you harm her, you will answer to me." "Then pray, Your Majesty," the Chancellor sneered, "that she survives long enough for your mercy to matter." That night, Leora sat in a stone cell beneath the castle, the chains biting into her wrists once again. But she wasn't afraid. Not this time. Because above her, somewhere in the storm that raged outside, she could feel it, the pull of something stronger than magic, stronger than curses or fear. A bond forged not by blood or power, but by belief. And belief, she thought, could shatter anything. Even fate. The storm came before dawn. Not a natural storm, no. The wind howled like an animal's grief, and lightning split the sky in a rhythm that felt deliberate, almost alive. The walls of the dungeon trembled, dust sifting from the ceiling with every thunderclap. Leora sat chained to the wall, her back straight, her mind clear. Sleep had long abandoned her. Somewhere above, someone screamed. Then came the unmistakable clang of steel on steel. A battle. The door to her cell burst open a heartbeat later. A guard stumbled inside, panting, his armor smeared with ash. He wasn't here to release her, he was hiding. He slammed the door shut, pressing his back against it, as if the darkness itself were pursuing him. "What's happening?" Leora demanded. He looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. "The king, he's turned." Her blood froze.
No.
He came out of the great hall like a storm. Half the council's dead. The rest fled. He's not human anymore. The guard's voice cracked. He's killing everyone. Leora pulled against her chains, the metal biting deep into her wrists. Where is he now? Everywhere. The guard's gaze darted toward the door, his breath shallow. I saw him tear through the throne room doors, his eyes. He didn't finish. Something massive slammed against the other side of the door, the impact so violent it knocked him forward. He screamed. Leora's heart lurched. Kale. But the thing that roared beyond the door wasn't calling her name. It was a sound of rage, despair, and loss all twisted into one. The guard fumbled for his sword. Gods forgive us all. The door splintered inward. A clawed hand, black and gleaming in the flickering torchlight, seized the guard and hurled him across the cell. He hit the far wall with a sickening crack and fell silent. Then the beast turned toward her.
Kale.
Even in this monstrous form, she knew him. The lines of his body, the shape of his shoulders, the faint scar near his jaw, still there, even beneath the fur and sinew. His golden eyes burned with anguish. Leora rose as far as her chains would allow. Kale, she said softly. It's me. The beast growled, low and guttural. The sound rattled her bones, but she didn't back away. They chained me again, she whispered. They called me a witch. They want to take you away from yourself. He twitched, his claws flexing, his breath harsh and uneven. You know me, she said, her voice trembling now. You know me. He took a step closer. The floor quaked beneath his weight. Leora closed her eyes. If you're going to kill me, do it. But I won't be afraid of you. Not ever. A pause, long, aching, endless. Then the sound of metal snapping. When she opened her eyes, the chains had been torn from the wall. Kale stood over her, the broken links hanging from his claws. His chest heaved, his eyes wild, but not with fury, with recognition. Leora rose shakily to her feet. Kale. He sank to one knee before her, massive hands trembling as he reached, hesitantly, for her face. When his claws brushed her cheek, a faint shimmer of light bloomed between them, like dawn trying to break through night. I told you, she whispered. You're not lost. His claws curled around her shoulders, pulling her closer. The heat radiating from him was unbearable, but she didn't flinch. The air filled with the scent of rain, smoke, and something ancient, the smell of the curse itself unraveling. The ceiling above them cracked, stones falling as the storm intensified. Leora pressed her hand to his chest. Listen to me, she said over the roar of thunder. You have to stop fighting yourself. You think the beast is your punishment, but maybe it's your truth. Maybe it's you. His growl deepened, his breath coming faster. You told me once that love couldn't exist without pain, she went on. Maybe that's what this curse really meant to teach you. That to love, you have to stop fearing what you are. His golden eyes locked onto hers, and then, slowly, impossibly, the beast exhaled. The change began, not violent this time, but fluid, almost beautiful. Fur receded, muscles softened. The monstrous silhouette shrank until Kale knelt before her, human again, his face streaked with blood and tears. Leora, he gasped. I almost. You didn't. She cupped his face in her hands. You came back. He caught her wrists gently, pressing her palms to his lips. They wanted me to kill you, he said hoarsely. They said the beast could only be silenced if your heart stopped beating. And I. She shook her head. Then let's make sure they never have the chance. Kale stood, pulling her with him. The council will regroup. They'll return with hunters. They won't stop until I'm dead or worse. Then we go to them first, she said. We show them what's true. He stared at her, incredulous. You'd stand beside me? After what they've called you? I stood beside you when you were a monster, she said. Standing beside a king is easy. A flicker of a smile crossed his face, wounded, hopeful. You'll be the death of me, Leora. Not if I can help it. They stepped out into the corridor. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. The bodies of guards and councilmen lay strewn across the floor. Cale hesitated, guilt twisting his features. She took his hand. "Then make it right," she said. "End this with truth, not fury." He nodded once. "Then truth it shall be." As they climbed the marble stairs toward the great hall, the storm outside began to subside. The clouds broke apart, revealing the faintest shimmer of dawn over the eastern peaks. And for the first time in years, the beast walked beside the light without fear. The great hall was half in ruin. Broken pillars leaned against shattered glass windows, the banners of the wolf sigil hanging torn and singed. The scent of smoke and lightning clung to everything. The storm outside had thinned into a soft drizzle, but thunder still rumbled over the mountains like a warning. Leora and Cale stepped into the devastation together. Dozens of guards, nobles, and counselors lined the walls, those who had survived the night's chaos. Their faces were pale, eyes wide, bodies trembling from fear more than exhaustion. At the far end of the hall, the High Chancellor knelt beside the wreckage of the throne, his robe scorched, his expression twisted with rage and disbelief. When he saw Cale enter, human once more, hand clasped tightly around Leora's, he staggered to his feet. "Monster," the Chancellor hissed. "You've doomed us all." Cale's voice carried through the ruined chamber, calm but commanding. "You call me monster because it suits your fear. But I am not the one who cursed this kingdom with lies." The Chancellor sneered. "You think your sentiment absolves you? You unleashed that abomination upon us. Half the council lies dead because of you, and because of her." Leora stepped forward, chin raised. "Because of me, you mean? The one you called barren? The one you condemned for believing he could be saved?" Murmurs rippled through the room. No one had ever dared address the council like that. Cale's hand brushed hers briefly, grounding her. "She is not your scapegoat," he said. "She's the reason any of you still draw breath. The curse broke because she saw what none of you could, that the beast was not my punishment. It was my truth." The Chancellor spat. "Blasphemy. The goddess's curse cannot be undone by a mortal's affection." Cale's eyes flashed gold, but not with rage this time, with conviction. "No, by love, it can. By humility, it must." He turned then to the hall, to the assembled nobles and guards who had served him through fear, never faith. "You all lived under the shadow of my father's rule," he said, his voice echoing against the cracked stone. "A reign built on cruelty, on power over mercy. I thought I could change that by force. The goddess showed me otherwise. She made me the very thing I despised, to learn that strength without compassion is no strength at all." He gestured toward Leora. "And she, this woman you call impure, showed me what it means to be whole." The crowd was silent. Even the storm seemed to pause, the rain slowing to a whisper against the ruined glass. Leora took a step forward, her voice quiet but clear. "You call me barren because my body cannot bear children. But life isn't only flesh and blood. I gave the king faith when he'd lost it. I gave him the will to fight his own darkness. If that isn't creation, then perhaps you don't understand the goddess's gift as well as you claim." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, somewhere in the back, an old knight dropped to one knee. Another followed, and another. Within seconds, the hall was filled with the sound of armor hitting stone, a chorus of allegiance renewed not by fear, but by choice. Only the Chancellor remained standing, his face twisted with fury. "You would let her stand beside you? A slave? A human? A cursed thing?" Cale's hand closed around Leora's. "Not beside me," he said. "With me." He stepped closer to the Chancellor. "You once told me the curse could never break without sacrifice. You were right. But the sacrifice was not hers, it was mine." Before the Chancellor could speak, Cale reached for the blade lying near the shattered throne, a ceremonial sword forged from the same silver as the chains that had once bound him. He held it out flat, resting it across both palms. "I renounce the fear that ruled me," he said softly. "I renounce the power that kept me blind." The sword glowed faintly, silver flaring to white. Then it split cleanly down the middle, melting into light that spread through the hall like dawn breaking after centuries of night. The walls groaned, the windows mended, the banners rose again on unseen wind. The very air seemed to exhale. The storm outside ceased. Leora felt warmth rush through her chest, a pulse like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. It filled her, spreading to every nerve, every breath. Cale turned to her, eyes bright, tears streaking through the ash on his face. "It's done," he whispered. "The curse is gone." The Chancellor fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "What have you done?" "Something you never could," Cale said. "I forgave myself." That night, under a sky scrubbed clean of clouds, the castle opened its gates for the first time in years. Villagers streamed in carrying torches and offerings. No guard stopped them. No banners of division hung between wolf and human anymore. Cale stood on the balcony, dressed not as a king, but as a man reborn. Leora beside him, her hair loose, a crown of moon lilies resting lightly upon it. "The kingdom is yours," he said quietly to her. She smiled faintly.
"No, Cale."
"It's ours." Down in the courtyard, people cheered, but she barely heard them. Her hand rested against her abdomen, and for the first time in her life, she felt something she had long believed impossible, a spark of life fluttering beneath her touch. Cale saw the change in her face and froze. "Leora?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "The goddess was never punishing us, Cale. She was waiting for both of us to heal." He pulled her into his arms, his laughter breaking through the hush of the crowd below. The people roared louder as the sun rose over the mountain peaks, painting the sky in gold. In that light, Leora finally understood what her stories had always been trying to tell her. That love wasn't about saving someone from their darkness. It was about standing in it with them, until dawn found you both. And as the first rays of sunlight warmed their joined hands, the kingdom that had once feared its cursed king began its first morning under a reign not of fear, but of love. In a world where love was forbidden and monsters ruled the night, Leora and Cale proved that even curses can be broken when someone finally dares to see the soul beneath the scars. If this story reached you, if it made you feel something, take a moment before the screen fades to black. Subscribe and stay with us for more dark fantasy love stories, tales where beauty is born from pain and where even monsters can find redemption. Because here, every ending is only the beginning of another legend.